Hello, all you hardcores. It's Russ here from Porky's Corner. Today we've got Julian here. Treat for you. It's in demand. How are you doing, Julian?
I'm good, mate. Good. Long day. Looking forward to a chat, talk about boxing and whatever else comes.
Yeah, I've not really took much notice last few days. I've been watching $6 Million Man today. Remember that?
Steve Austin, the
Steve
Bionic Man.
Austin,
Oh,
Lee
my God.
Majors, and I watched a program about 2008 crash. It's called Margin Call. Kevin Spacey and some other guy in it. Good film.
Yeah.
Good film. Yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Good film. Sometimes you just got to switch off from boxing, aren't you?
I've done exactly the same thing, mate. I've seen hardly anything for about the past 5 or 6 days. I take myself away from it because it's like, what do they say? The more things change, the more things stay the same. And boxing tends to be like that. So I've got a few fights on DAZN I've not even caught up with. I know there's some fights coming up this weekend, and I couldn't tell you exactly what they were. And that's not because I'm not hardcore. It's probably because I am. I like to think of myself as being hardcore, that I don't follow it as diligently as I can because it's half the time it's not worth it, mate.
Yeah, all right then. I've been looking at a few things today and analysing a few things and looking at how many fights that these two promoters have put on. Do you feel that the problem we boxing in the country at the moment is the fact that the two dogs, the two promoters, Bricktop and Eddie Hills, they just don't want to work with each other. It's like that deep and rooted and between them and bitter. It's had a knock-on effect, hasn't it, for sport? I personally think that. If you can't put 10 fights on between you in 12 years, there's a problem, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit like, I know the sanctioning bodies work with each other a little bit easier now, but I know in the kind of 80s, especially, the WBA and the WBC were just the same. They just, a lot of the time, they couldn't work with each other. So we got denied a lot of unification fights. Luckily, we still had unification fights. And it's a little bit like that with Warren and Hearn. I think also as well, they try too hard on some of the promotions. They're always looking for that perfect show. It has to be a big show. It has to be a big main event. And they're also not keeping fighters busy. I think that's as big a problem as not working together as keeping fighters inactive. But we're the losers ultimately, aren't we? Because we're not seeing that much right now.
I speak to man in the street, and people who don't follow sport like we do, and they say things to me like, but obviously they know what I've been doing last. Well, it's about seven years since I started with Dennis, and then obviously been on my own doing this for nearly 3 years. But point I want to make is that when I speak to people who don't follow it every day, they say what's happening, who's fighting, and they'll throw a few fights at me, and I say that's not being made. And I say, well, I can't really invest my time in it, Russ. Do you feel that with people you speak to, Julian?
Definitely. I mean, I obviously get it from a coaching point of view. It's a little bit like Facebook. I came off Facebook, might be coming up to a year ago, I forget. And people say to me, "Oh, you're not on Facebook anymore, are you?" And I go, no, come off, came off it, can't be doing with it. And they always turn around and say, I don't blame you. And I get the same with coaching not because I'm a well-known coach, but in Dewsbury, I am well-known in terms of my association with Sykes, and you go anywhere in Dewsbury and people always know you and they come up to me and they say, "You still coaching, Jules?" And I'll say, "No, not really. I do like the odd little bit, but generally not really." And they give me exactly the same response as I do with Facebook. And they go, "I don't blame you. There's not about really, is there? There's not that many big names in West Yorkshire, and there's not many fights I want to see." And people react exactly the same with me and boxing as they do with me and Facebook. They just say, "Don't blame you."
Crawford Ashley actually reached out to me a couple of days ago and asked me, well, he sent something to Facebook, our Facebook, but I don't run it. I ain't got passwords for it. Simon Thompson runs it, but asking if you look on my most viewed video, it's when I went to see Crawford. It's 120,000 views.
Yeah,
I went with Mickey Theo to see him, but point I want to make is his son Theo's turning pro as a cruiserweight. And I just wanted me to ask his opinion. So Crawford, email me on porkycorner@mail.com. But that he's out Renthorpe way, in a junction 41 way. It's like Wakefield border
I
elite.
believe so. Yeah.
So I don't know how they work it with a trainer out there. I don't know. Who would you recommend? Chris Aston?
See, that's always the problem, isn't it? So Chris Aston's, yeah, he's
He's
Huddersfield.
Huddersfield, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Huddersfield. Linthwaite is Chris. It's not being disrespectful when people say to me, "Who would you recommend?" I mean, I know a lot of coaches locally,
Nick
and I
Manners.
know a lot of gyms. It depends what you want. I mean, you've got some coaches who are affiliated with certain managers and certain promoters. So Nick, and obviously he's part of Sean's team, and he's also involved with VIP. You know, he works with VIP boxes.
Yeah.
And Steve Wood's a good inroad for fighters to go.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Steve Wood, sort of Nick Manners, kind of like that sort of group.
Of all the fighters
Yeah.
I've had, I think most of them at one time or another have gone with Steve Wood. And Steve Wood for me was just, what I loved about Steve Wood was he wasn't massively involved as a manager until you needed him to be. And that was the beauty of Steve for me. I would always try and keep boxers busy. And he'd just say, when you wanted him out? And I'd say, oh, you know, I'm not worried about TV shows and stuff. Oh, I want him out in about 5-6 weeks. So let me have a look. And he'll just say, if you can do the tickets, I'll put you on this show. So Steve were really good in that. He'd say, I've got a show here, I've got a show there. If you can do the tickets, I'll put your kid on. But what Steve also would do, then he'd just say, do you need anything? And you just say, I'm absolutely fine, mate. Because I'm quite self-sufficient as a coach. But, you know, if you're ever short of sparring or you struggle for sparring, you contact Steve, which is a role of a manager, and he would find you the sparring. And
he's the manager teaching it in Green Book, that, isn't it?
Yeah, he doesn't. Steve, he's not overbearing and he's not in your face, but is supportive. I'm not going to go into financials, but he's as competitive as any manager out there. And I have to be completely honest and just say, I don't really know anybody who's got anything bad to say about Steve Wood. And it shows for me, it shows how good he is, that Josh Warrington, when he became a world champion, and, you know, he's subsequently, is at a stage, is Josh Warrington, where he could self-manage now. Josh Warrington has always stayed loyal with Steve, and he's renewed his contract with Steve several times. And that speaks volume. How many fighters do you actually get who stay with a manager from debut all the way through the good times and the bad times? So
funny things to know it all, don't they? So they chop and change managers, don't they?
Yeah, they go with him, they go with them, they play the game.
But it's them that are the fault, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Loyalty is a two-way thing, but as long as that manager's doing what you require him to do, which Steve Wood always did, you know. And the good thing about Steve, I'm not blowing smoke up Steve's backside. Everybody knows Steve's a good guy. But the one good thing about Steve was when I had Sykes, because Sykes was a big name, and when he wasn't the British champion, he was it wasn't quite coming down, but it wasn't in his heyday. Steve would just say to me, I've been offered Kevin Mitchell, so-and-so, September, what do you think for Sykes? And I'd go, no, not at the moment, mate. He's not in a good place. Or, you know, whatever reason. And Steve, instead of like some people are really pushy, would just say, no worries, mate, no worries. And he'd always offer you a fight as opposed to tell you that you had to take a fight.
Yeah.
And I think that's very rare now. You get a lot of pressure put on a lot of fighters and a lot of trainers to take fights, what they're not ready for, short notice jobs. And Steve would just give you the option. If you said no, he'd just take it on the chin.
Yeah. Well, I don't know Steve Wood, so I can't comment on him, but I do know Nick Manners, and he lives local to Crawford and his lad Theo. And I think that Nick, I trust Nick. I trust Nick. He knows his game inside out, doesn't he, Nick Manners?
Yeah, Nick would be a good person to contact. It's
so
like
Nick,
anything.
Crawford has saved me a job.
it's one of those, isn't it? And Nick knows this. It's like, it depends how decorated the amateur is when he's turning over. You know, if you've got a kid who's GB podium or absolutely phenomenal ticket seller, then he might want to be looking at one of the networks, you know, one of the big promoters. But if you've got a kid who wants developing and is going to be a slow grower, then you have to act accordingly, don't you? And I don't know much about Crawford's son.
See, this
If
is
he's
it
got-
at the moment, isn't it? You know, with these, does he want developing or does he do tickets? Because that Mark Tibbs is a pal of mine, right? But that Johnny Fisher, he's heavyweight. What is he, 5-0? I don't rate him. They're all losing the shit over him. They've had him on TalkSport today. I don't want to seem to be harsh, bitter, or overcritical, but when somebody's doing 3,000-4,000 tickets, nobody's going to say fucking boo whether they can fight or not, are they? And I don't think he does fucking nothing in heavyweight division. I don't think he wins the British. I don't even think they're going to put him near anybody with a fucking heartbeat for another 4 or 5 years, mate. So get ready. He's only 22. So he'll be fighting for a British loads of years from now, if he even gets there, because they're just going to milk it while he's doing tickets, aren't they? Forget all that, fucking developing and shit like that. This is what sends me mad.
It's the word potential for me. I like to think I've got an eye for talent, and I look at a fighter and I'll say, that kid, we have to go slow. That kid, you can put in,
Well, they're saying they're going to go very, very slow with him because they know he's not that much cop, don't they?
Well, they're going to go very slow with him because if he's on 10, 15 shows and sells 3, 4, 5,000 tickets, by the time he's had his
propping
10
shows up.
Yeah, he's propping shows up. He's selling out mediocre shows because these people, he's a popular lad. He's from Romford. I don't see anything in there that's, I don't think he's that explosive. I think he's a little bit predictable. He's got no left hook or anything to speak of. It's all about the big right hand. He walks clockwise. He walks in circles. Yeah, he's got time on his hands, but ultimately it's not just about having time on your hands, is it? It's about, I talk about this all the time, right? The business models change completely. I had a conversation with Max the other day, and Max is dead open about who he is, where he's from, and he was telling me, I won't go into detail about names, but he said he's had a few WhatsApp exchanges with some fighters. Let's create a bit of beef. Let's have a bit of this. Let's have a bit of that. And you know what I'm talking about. And I said to him, and I'm dead honest with Max, and I said, fucking hell, Max, is this what we have to do now? We have to just boycott the amateurs. Let's not get any pedigree. Let's not have 8, 9, 10 years in the amateurs, going through the novices, the open class, the developments. Let's not learn our trade. Let's just have fucking fake beef on social media.
Fake bollocks.
And is this where we're at now? Are we effectively saying we've got a 2-tier system? We've got like 1 or 2% of the elite or the quality, and then are we saying the rest of it's just a popularity contest between all these ex-white collar fighters? Is that where boxing's at right now?
Well, Max has got 22,000 followers on Instagram, right? And you'd say if Johnny Fisher's a 2 out of 10 at the moment for progress, Max is a 0, isn't he? He's got a long way to go, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's a long way to go, and he's not 22-year-old, is he? I guess
Max
that's
34.
So I understand Max, and Max has said the same thing. He's like, he's part of the problem, isn't he? And he's not part of the solution.
I have to tell him on here, so you're part of the problem, people like you. Well, I like him, but I'm just telling him straight. I'm not going to do him no favours on here. He comes in, I tell him straight, and I know I could see him. He sat there, and I told him what I thought. I could see eyes filling up.
Listen, I sound my age, and he started being a bit cheeky as Max, actually. He's calling me an old bugger and granddad. And I'm like, Max, if you carry on with this lip, son, I'm going to release that body sparring footage of me and you. And I'll be sending it to your Uncle Porky. So be careful with your lip, mate.
You softened him up, didn't you?
I'm saying nothing, mate. But Max is a great lad. But I've said the same thing to Max. I get where he's coming from, because he's 34-year-old. He's going to try any trick he can to get a big payday and to do what's best for him.
Yeah.
But where is that kind of, this is where I sound my age is, everybody wants to get rich quick. Everybody wants everything instant gratification. They want it now. Everybody wants to be famous for actually not being very talented and for not being very good at anything. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which side of the fence you sat on, social media gives people a platform, doesn't it? You got intelligent people, informed opinions on social media, getting 100 views, and then you got completely uninformed, unintelligent people getting 100,000 views, and it's like, when did that happen? I know I'm going on again about generational thing, but when Ricky Gervais said the same thing, it's like, when did this happen that people started being well known and highly rewarded? I mean, this is non-boxing, but what's she called? Gemma Collins.
Hello, I'm Gemma Collins, and I'm always on a diet. That's her line, isn't it?
Yeah. What the fuck? I mean, when did that happen? That, you know, people like her were kind of icons, and young girls wanted to be Gemma Collins, and young. I don't know, mate. I don't know, but I know we're going off track from boxing, but this is the point, isn't it? And this is not rubbish in boxing. We're saying, where are the stars coming through? Not the big names. People will say to me, "What are you talking about? Where are the stars?" Conor Ben's. So I'm not on about names. I'm not talking about attractions. Where are the stars coming through? Where's that generation that we saw? That generation of, all right, he's back with his rose tinted glasses, but they're not rose tinted. Where are the Aaron Pryors, the Ray Leonards, the Tommy Earnses, the Roberto Durans, the Larry Holmeses, the young Mike Tyson? Where are these fighters coming through now? I'm not saying there aren't really good fighters out there. There are a few of them. But where's this future generations of all-time greats? I mean, how many fighters would you say today you think will go down to be Hall of Fame fighters?
From this bunch now that are fighting now? Well, they'll squeeze Joshua in for what he's done for boxing, because he won an Olympic gold. But you wouldn't say he were much cop, would you? Because they were manufactured fights, weren't they, that he's had?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's what I would call as a, you know, if we're talking about the pantheon of the great heavyweights, he's probably a C minus.
No, if you put him in top 100 heavyweights, he'd be looking to get into top 100, wouldn't he?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really know, to be honest. None from this era, from England. None.
No, I don't think.
Go back 10 years.
And that's a really good point you've just made there, is I don't think we've got a future all-time great.
No, none.
At the moment in the crop of British fighters. I mean, the first shoe-in obviously would be Canelo Alvarez. For me, that's a real grey area, but he's allowed to
fail the dope test.
Yep, he's failed the dope test. He's a proven drugs cheat, and that's
Tyson Fury. He had 3 tests.
So where are the
Usyk?
Yeah, so Usyk might make it.
Lomachenko
might make it. It depends on, I guess, where he goes from there. Lomachenko would be an all-time great fighter, but as a professional, he's what, 16-2. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe Gamboa might be a potential.
Julius Gamboa.
Sorry, Tank. Yes, Tank Davis. Sorry, not Gamboa. Tank Davis. I think Tank Davis he's got a lot of attributes that might, if he continues with that dedication and his commitment, he looks a force. But I think the point I'm making is, even though people say you should review people at the end of the career, don't judge a fight at the end of the career. When we watched Marvin Hagler, we knew Marvin Hagler was going to be one of the great middleweights, didn't we? We didn't need to wait until he fought Thomas Hearns to recognise that Hagler was probably one of the greatest middleweights our eyes had ever seen. And we saw the same thing. We knew Roberto Duran, well before he finished his career, was one of the great lightweights of all time. And Michael Spinks, Larry Holmes, all these guys across all the divisions, we had great fighters coming through. Alexis Arguello, Aaron Pryor, Salvador Sanchez, Azuma Nelson. Where are the truly great fighters now that we think are going to go down in history, and they're going to sit, the Mount Rushmore of the elite boxing immortals?
Okay, then that brings me to this question here. Tony Bellew put a tweet out 4 years, 2 months ago. So 50 months ago. I've sent you the tweet. You know about this one, I'm asking now.
Yep.
And he said, and I quote, Joshua Buatsi is going to be a multi-weight champion, and he is like Holyfield and Andre Ward rolled into one. Right now, it's 6 years since Olympics. He's not won a European title yet.
Well, he's not even proven to be the best light heavyweight in Britain yet, has he? Far from it. So,
no, he fights Craig Richards, doesn't he, in a few months?
Well, Craig Richards, and I mean this respectfully, Craig Richards looks a domestic level operator for me. So
yeah,
that's where we're at right now. And you know the history, and you know Holyfield, 2 years on, KO Magazine's Fight of the Year, 1986. He'd only been a pro for just short of 2 years, and he beat Dwight Muhammad Cowie in a 15-round Fight of the Year. The formidable Dwight Muhammad Cowie, formerly Dwight Braxton. That was an unbelievable fight. And then in just less than 4 years, Holyfield had unified. He'd beat Carlos Dillian, Ricky Parkey, etc. And then he was talking about knocking on the heavyweight door. So that's what he'd achieved in just 2 years of being a pro. And why did he achieve that? It wasn't because it was a narrow division. There were good fighters in the cruiserweight division. He achieved that because he was the real deal. His management, Dover Promotions, his management knew that Evander Holyfield could cut it, so they put him out there. So why are we waiting 6 years and we still haven't seen Joshua Buatsi fight a world-class fighter? So if Tony Bellew, if you think he's an Andre Ward hybrid of Evander Holyfield, I don't believe you mean that. You said it 4 years ago. I don't believe you meant that, because you know boxing. You're a former elite fighter yourself. And again, you're just plugging your mates. That's all you're doing. You're just plugging your pals.
Plugging his mates' fighters.
Yeah, that's all you're doing. He did the same with Jordan Gill. Jordan Gill looks a decent European level operator, doesn't he? And I think that's probably find his level at European level, and he's a good little fighter. And I enjoy
He did the same with David Price. He said he were heir apparent to Klitschko's.
And we knew David Price, even in the amateurs, was chinning. He was vulnerable around the whiskers with the head guards and the big gloves, didn't we? So we knew Price was, there's no way Price was going to get anywhere near that level. And I think it's, as I talk to you all the time about journalism, about broadcasting, your job's to be neutral. Your job's to inform the consumer and the audience. And listen, we all get excited now and again. When Mike Tyson came through, he rocked boxing to the core, didn't he? He turned over in 85, and 19 fights in his first. He was fighting every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. But with Tyson, there was this massive. He would generate excitement with his fists and with his results and with the way he was performing. But I look at Joshua Buatsi. There's nothing at all to excite me there whatsoever. He just looks a
he
decent.
Could get beat by Craig Richards, couldn't he? Could get beat.
Yeah, I don't think it will, but it wouldn't surprise me, because there's a lot of what he does. He looks a bit pedestrian. I think he puts too much length on his shots when he's up close. I don't think he's as damaging a puncher as people actually thought he was. He's definitely there to be hit. There's nothing special about Buatsi. Yeah, he's an Olympian and he's Olympic bronze medalist, but there's no sparkle that says to me he can beat anybody, because if there is, then you match him quite quickly. I remember when Costa Zhu turned over, they matched Costa Zhu tough right from the beginning, because he was a proven elite amateur. They matched him tough early, and he performed. They did the same with Pernell Whitaker, didn't they? With Pernell Whitaker, they put him in really quickly with the likes of Roger Mayweather. Because they knew.
That class of 84, that class of 84 were all fast track. But going on about Joshua Buatsi, he's trained by Virgil Hunter. Now, a lot of big noise has been made about Virgil Hunter. Is this, is that, blah, blah, blah. He's only had one world champion, Andre Ward. And he's had a lot of fighters handed on a plate to him, Costa Ward. Done note with any of them. Done nothing. He ruined Amir Khan. He ruined Angulo. Ruined Angulo. And if this is another one, is Andre Ward, is Virgil Hunter a one-hit wonder?
Well, you have to say, looking at the results and everything that you've just said at this moment, you have to say, yes, he is. Yeah. Al Certo had 20 unified world champions across his career. Look at the Doovers, look at George Benton and Eddie Futch, look at who those guys have worked with and who those guys have brought through. And it's not just because they get the best fighters dropped on the lap.
Joe Gallagher.
Look at Joe Gallagher's proven. Joe Gallagher's had so many world champions and ridiculous amount of British champions and European and Commonwealth and the whole lot.
You have to put him in that mix, wouldn't you?
You'd have to do. You know, you got Garcia, you've got Eddie Reynoso. You've got some coaches out there who have got multiple world champions to their name. I mean, you know, going back again, but you only have to look at Emmanuel Stewart was proven across generations, wasn't he? He was proven, you know, from the late 70s, and you had the Hill McKenties who he brought through, and then he brought Tommy Ernst through, and Jimmy Paul and Mickey Goodwin and all those guys. Then he had Michael Mora, you know, at cruiserweight, and then he brought people. Exactly. McCrory, Mike McCallum for a while he worked with McCallum, and he brought
McClellan, James Toney.
Exactly. So look at Emmanuel Stewart's body of work, and then you look at the body of work of, like you just said, Virgil. It's not on the same planet, is it?
No, he's a one.
So did the fighter make the trainer in that case?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Andre Ward did. Yeah. Okay. There's a rumor going around that Parker and Joyce could be signed next week or so. Do you think that's a good fight?
I think it's an ugly fight. I've not heard that one.
It's something though, isn't it? It's something that first to get his teeth into.
I think, yeah, when I say it's an ugly fight, it's a physical fight. I mean, you're never going to mistake Joe Joyce for Eldrick Taylor, are you? He's never going to have those silky skills, but he's effective. He gets the job done. And you'd have to say, to keep that momentum going forward, that's probably a good fight for Joe Joyce.
Yeah. What did you think he's had a lot of stick, Eddie Hills, for this, but he knocked that little fat kid with spots about, didn't he, in sparring? He's had loads of stick over it. Do you think that were bullying that? Because I mentioned it first, and then they come out with it. I said that he was coming out next saying that Eddie broke his ribs, and that next day he did, didn't he?
Well, what it is for me, right? Listen, I've had a million spars with lads in the gym, people from my classes and pros, all kinds of things. You know, I've took a few and given a few, and I've been body sparring with Max lately. You know, he's 20 stone, so he's not trying to break me in half. But what it is for me is if Eddie Hearn wants to move around with Frank Smith or whoever and just have a mess about in gym, go ahead. But it's when they're almost like treating it like a real fight, aren't there? And the 10 people filming it, and you got all the cheerleaders there, just like, why don't you just have a little private spar and just mess about? Would you have to? You can put stuff out like
Eddie was putting some mustard on his shots, wasn't he?
Eddie was letting his shots go, and the thing is with that, and you can see he's done a bit of boxing training. You can see how he positions himself and how he stands. I mean, technically, Eddie, your punches are coming way too far back. Don't telegraph them, you know, shorten them up inside a little bit. I'm being silly, but it's you have to be careful, don't you? Because it's the visual of a guy who's he must be 6'4", Eddie, must be a heavyweight.
6'6", isn't he?
Yeah, he's a big lump, isn't he? He's a big lad. He's long limbed. And you have the visual of Eddie, and then this little out of shape guy who clearly is not a boxer of any kind of format. And the visual looks like he's been a little bit cruel to him. I'm sure it was in good spirits. It was a bit of a laugh, but I don't know. What I would say is he wasn't moving around with one of the fighters, was he?
Would you?
I'll move around with my fighters. I would like to say I was sparring Max the other day. Whilst he wasn't trying to kill me, he was cracking me. And he's 20 stone and 50-year-old. Not worried about stuff like that whatsoever. So maybe Eddie could have had a spar with Johnny Fisher.
Would you have a move around with Eddie, Julian?
50-year-old riddled with arthritis any day of the week.
Would you take care of him?
I don't know. I wasn't unbeaten like Eddie, was I? I'd be
a cheap shot.
Yeah. To be fair to Eddie, he gets a bit of stick, but he's definitely spent time in boxing gyms and done a bit of boxing. I'm not suggesting he was this. I know you've got him at 5-0 now, haven't you? I'm not suggesting he was 4-0. I don't find it hard to believe he had a skills bout or two, maybe, but or an inter-club spar. That I think they're more like inter-club spars of some of these skills bouts. But listen, good luck to him. We all mess about in the gyms. We all have a piss about, but I'm not going to challenge Eddie to a body spar because I'll come across like the emperor, won't I? Calling people out body sparring.
I was speaking to somebody who goes up to Ingle Gym, and it weren't a spar he had with Kel Brook. He was fucking stressing him out to get in with Kel. It was a move around, and that were all it was. And he got a bit cheeky, so Kel put him in his place. But that wasn't a spar, was it?
It was messing around with him, wasn't it? Liam Williams was like just moving about, and then I think Kel Brook just literally tickled him a little bit, didn't he? He just tickled him a bit. That's all it was. I mean, that, you know, this is an elite level fighter, isn't it? Against probably not a very good white collar fighter. No disrespect to the Emperor, but this was
fucking hell.
The Emperor. Is that what he's called this week?
Fucking hell, they're all making videos about me, Joe. I mean, I should worry about it when they don't know, shouldn't I?
Look, it's one of those things, isn't it? You know, like, as I said, my grandma always said, if they're talking about you, they're leaving some other bugger alone.
Nobody gets no right, do they?
Yeah. The one thing, though, is some of these videos, what people do, I don't really watch it, but they just need to, the one thing that you do, and I'm not ass kissing, is at least you're funny with it.
You know what winds me up? When they say, oh, yeah, he went to Turkey for a gastric ban. They fucking had it in Sheffield 9 years ago. Then they say, well, a drug addict. Yeah, he took his mum's fucking purse and robbed her. Fucking hellfire.
It grows, doesn't it? It becomes that Chinese.
It becomes like the norm. And then members of my family saying, what's fucking this? I didn't know you robbed your mum's purse. Who fucking told you that? Oh, it's in this video here. Oh, God, but I just laugh it off. Okay. The Dave Allen comeback. Dave Allen's retired a few times. I've been critical of him because he said that he's not got it no more. He was having bad concussions, bad headaches. He couldn't get up for it, wasn't training, not been doing cardio, blah, blah, blah. Turned up in ring, 20 stone, out of shape. Admits he was slow, blah, blah, blah. They put him in with a guy with a losing record, stops him in second round. Is he cheating the public?
Well, first of all, I know you know Dave Allen. I've never met him. I think when he came onto the scene, I was just coming off the scene with my fighters. Yeah. But first of all, are you being critical, or are you coming from
I'm trying to be like in middle here because I get a lot of people emailing me, hey, you don't fucking send out about this person or that person. So I'm trying to say, well, look, what do you think? He's come out. I've watched the interview today on Boxing Socials. Yeah, well, I'm out of shape. I was slow. And then you go back. Not so many months ago, and he's saying he's retired, he ain't got it no more, he's been knocked about and concussions and headaches and all this shit, and he just wants away from it, he ain't got it no more and all this. Then they fucking come back, and then he's saying he's coming back and he's paying to fight, paying for opponent and just to get out there, to get these wins, to get back in mix. It's a bit of a far cry from knocking 300 grand back to fight Dubai, isn't it?
It's a huge fall from grace, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, if it's got to that stage, you've got to say, let's call it a day. Because I know, I'm not having a go at Dennis here, but there's a lot I could fucking say about how it works behind the scenes with Dennis. When you're paying to fight, pay to fight, what are they fucking listening to? And you know, we've spoke about things in past, and we won't mention it on here about people paying to fucking fight on certain promoters' shows. What the fucking hell is he doing, Dave Allen? Has he fucking loopy? Is he loop the loop? Yeah, I'm paying for opponent just to get out there to get win. What fucking mindset has he got? He's fucking punch drunk, isn't he? Is he being took advantage of? I mean, what the fucking hell?
I really worried, just like everybody else. He's got a winning record and he's got a decent level of talent, but people get hit in sparring and people get hurt. But the way that he sagged against Usyk in sparring, it was like really worrying that once you're sagging like that and you are out on your feet when you're sparring, and it wasn't the biggest punch I've ever seen.
30-year-old now.
Yeah, so he's in the spotlight and he's a well-known fighter. So he's going to be scrutinized. And what will happen, like anything, if Dave Allen does get hurt in a fight, and if he does suffer some damage, it's going to be very visible and it's going to be a massive black eye for boxing. And ultimately, he's got to live with it. So I don't know what he's got left. But he's certainly a guy who was like a real fun factor on matchroom shows, and he was earning good money and getting offered good money to be fighting in sports centres effectively. It's quite sad. It's a sad end.
Well, we all remember Dennis coming on my channel saying any promoter that works with Dave Allen after that Price fight, a David Price fight, that they need looking at because he shouldn't be fighting and all that. Well, Dennis, you're promoting him. So reap what you sow. You always used to say that to me. Do what you say, reap what you sow. Well, you reap what you sow, Dennis, because it's disgusting.
Yeah, I've had two. Yeah, I've worked with two fighters who I walked away from. Three.
You never did Gary Sykes' last fight, did you? Because you said he was shot, didn't you?
No, I told him he was done, and that was it. And
was that Luke Campbell?
Yeah. A year before Luke Campbell, I didn't want to do the Walsh fight, and then ended up walking away after the Walsh fight. He begged me to do it. I compromised myself. I shouldn't have done the Walsh fight, but for whatever reason, we did. And then I walked away. He had a couple of fights. He had a warm up, and then he fought Campbell. And then there was two other boxers. One of them who never spoke to me again. I said, "We're done." He was shot to shit. I told him he was shot to shit. And then another one, I won't mention his name, is a very, very good friend of mine. I had a really honest, hard conversation with him. And he was actually in tears. And I said, your punch resistance has gone. You start to slur your words, and I can't be a part of this. And he was absolutely heartbroken, but good. Thankfully now we're really good friends and we're back on track. As you know, and we look back and he says to me, I won't mention his name out of respect. He says, it was kind of good advice. And I left him. Or I said that was it. And he had 3 more fights after we'd finished. And it didn't end well. And I didn't feel good about that. But it's, you know, there are too many coaches out there and too many people who hang on with fighters who they know are no longer, they shouldn't be boxing anymore. And people hang on there. So call me what you like. You know, I'm the first person to get out. When the time's right, I'll say, you're done. You know, when a fighter, the signs are always there. You see it. You see the struggle with the weight. But the biggest sign for me is always when you got a kid who's really tough and really durable, and he starts getting wobbled in sparring, you know, with the big head guards.
Yeah.
You're like, ooh, and sometimes fighters get hit in sparring and they just freeze a little bit. It happens when they're in their early 30s, often to the mid 30s. They get hit and they just kind of like judder.
Yeah, but Dave's had a lot of punishment sparring. Tyson, Joshua, Usyk, Chisora, Dylan White. Plus, he's been in with big punches and been knocked out and been smashed up. Andy Price, Yoka, Dylan White said about him. Luis Ortiz. He's had some fist standing out years, and that's having wars as an amateur. He's 500 rounds with Joshua, 500 with both Furies. That's 1,000 rounds with Huey and Tyson, who were just peppering him and staying out of the way, not getting clipped. They had a lot of punishment, and I'm starting to wonder. When I knew him when he was speaking a lot clearer, and I'm speaking to him. watching him speak now, I'm thinking, fucking hell, mate. And then I put something on from years ago, and you look at it's chalk and cheese, day and night. And I can see it. We all see it, but the fighter's the last one to see it because they want that payday. And you know what? When he puts his head down on pillow at night, he's going to regret listening to Eddie Hearn and Darren Barker not going with his own instincts and taking that Warren deal because he don't owe them fuck all. They're not there for him now.
Take the money and get out, and just take the money and get out. And that's the problem, because you mentioned sparring, Russell, and sparring. Listen, sparring's never safe. What we do with boxing is we make it as safe as we can possibly make it. But people think that because you're wearing bigger gloves and you got head guards that you take less punishment in sparring. You take more punishment. First of all, your head's a bigger target. The glove surface area is bigger. What head guards effectively do is, well, the first thing to stop you getting cut. And then head guards were brought into the amateurs when they reintroduced them into the amateurs 20, 30 years ago, whenever it was, 85, 86, I forget. It was to stop the whip, the whiplash when fighters get knocked down and they're banging their head on the canvas. It was to protect the back of the cranium, to protect that. And so it was they brought the head guards in with amateurs because the perception was it made it safer. And also it protected the cranium and it stopped people getting cut. And that's why a lot of, they use them in sparring for the same thing. But when fighters are getting hit time and time and time again in sparring, you rattle the brain. Every time you rattle the brain, you lose brain cells, sorry. Brain cells die every time you get hit. It's trauma. You get hit with a jab, it's trauma. People don't realize that. And you can only take so many blows to the head before it starts rattling your brain and affecting everything, affecting your movement, your speech, your memory, short-term memory, long-term memory. And Dave Allen, people will turn around and say, I've only had 15 fights, I've only had 20 fights. It's like you've just said, it's not the fights, it's the sparring. And he's not a defensively savvy fighter, is he? He's not a...
That's why Peter Fury got rid of him. He said, I want a tough guy. Move your fucking head. He used to scream, move your fucking head. Yeah, well, we only have to look at... We absolutely loved him, but we only have to look at how some of those fighters, even like the likes of Joe Fraser, you listen to how those guys were speaking. Towards the end of Joe Fraser's career. He sounds like James Toney now.
Absolutely punch drunk because they're sparring all the time. I was never big on sparring.
Okay, then. Yui's not got no opponent at the moment. I wonder what's going to happen there with that Sky deal. I wonder if they're going to run it down or if they can't match him, but it's getting a bit stupid now, isn't it?
So frustrating, isn't it? And I just wish fighters would be out there more. I said this recently on one of your comments, that fighters have to take some responsibility as well. It's the job of the manager and the promoters to keep them busy. And if you won't keep them busy, guess what? I'll go out and find a fight myself and I'll fight on a non-TV show. But the problem we've got now is we've got all these named fighters. If they're not on a TV show, they're not active. And it doesn't make any sense to me. At the moment, Hughie Fury is not earning any money.
No.
So why not take a big pay cut and just box on a support somewhere and just keep busy and keep active?
Show.
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Eddie's come out and said Usyk, Joshua could be next. He's going to know next week. Do you think there's a way that Joshua can beat Usyk, or do you think that he'll never beat him in a month of Sundays?
No, I think there is a way he can beat him, and I think the way he can beat him is exactly how they're going about it. It leaves a real bitter taste in my mouth that they're even talking about that fight right now. So right now we know that Usyk's on the front line. He's part of the territorial army. Yeah. He's over there now. This is not somebody who's hiding away. Usyk is over there, is involved, in this action. And I don't even know how they're having dialogue with him or with his manager, and I don't know what the status is. I heard recently, it might have been a week or two ago, because I've not been on social media for a while, that Eddie Hearn said something about it's looking like June. So Usyk said, didn't he, after he beat Joshua last time, he says, I need 6 months notice, because he has, for whatever reason, he has really long camps. Mm. So he clearly can't have a 6-month camp if he's going to fight in June. And I don't know what the contract's like, but there's enough going on in the world right now for that fight. They shouldn't be talking about that fight, in my opinion. It just leaves it's a very cynical move to try and catch a guy who's massively preoccupied. They didn't want the rematch immediately, did they? The fight was in September.
Well, October 8th, there was no war then, mother, October 8th.
No, there were no war in October, mate, and they didn't want to do it sooner, did they? So if that fight happens, you've got to ask what Usyk's mental state and physical state is going to be like, and if Joshua's going to get a victory. You know, if I turn around and say won't beat Usyk in a month of Sundays, that's not true, because the Usyk who beat Joshua and schooled him was one who was primed, he was ready, he'd had a camp, he was fully sharp and fully fit. He still has to be at 90% of his best to beat Joshua. You know, if you can't just turn up and have 6-7 weeks in a gym and get ready for Joshua, he needs a full camp to do.
Trying to mess them about with dates and this and that, and just calling it on them quick and all this, aren't they? They're going to try everything, aren't they?
Yeah, I am curious why Joshua's not boxed in between though, because as I say, was it September they boxed? So this is some time ago now, isn't it? This is back to this once a fucking year job for Anthony Joshua, isn't it? It's like, is that the schedule of legacy? Because he keeps doing the hashtag legacy thing, doesn't he? And he's talking about legacy defining.
Not fucking fought no one yet.
I haven't fought nobody, and it's like the bollocks at the moment. I keep hearing Deontay Wilder's name mentioned. He's retired. So you're calling out a guy who's retired, and you're calling out a guy who's on the front line right now. Yeah. He's shameful, isn't he?
An Otto Wallin.
An Otto Wallin who barely scraped by a journeyman in like the worst six rounder I've seen in bloody years. So
yeah, I know. Moving on then.
Move on.
I've had an email off somebody, and I have to be very skeptical about emails because I'm very distrusting, because everybody's trying to. A lot of people would like to see me fucking shut this down. Let me tell you, mate.
Absolutely, would you?
I'm telling you now, mates. But if this email's bollocks, shame on you. But he said, I think it's genuine, but Mark Potter's got cancer, and there's a GoFundMe page somewhere online. I don't know where it is, but if anybody knows about it, send me a link. But try and donate if you can. If you can't, just wish Mark Potter all the best. I don't know what his social media handles are or anything like that, but he's a boxer from down south, isn't he, Mark?
Yeah, Mark Potter was the guy Danny Williams knocked out with one arm, wasn't he?
No, were he?
I think so. I thought it was the guy from the Southerner.
Yeah, did Audley knock somebody out with one arm? Yeah, Michael Sprott, but
Mark Potter, Danny Williams dislocated his right collarbone, and I think he threw the left up from hell. It was an absolute peach of a shot, and he knocked Potter out. And I think Potter ended up doing a bit of MMA or something, a bit of unlicensed. He's a hard man. He's a good fighter. But I'm sure it's the same one. But first of all, I hope it's a rumor and it's not true.
Yeah, I do.
I genuinely do. But because I'm not on social media, I couldn't verify the source. But you have to be careful what you get in your inbox, don't you?
Yeah, Joe Gallagher's fighter, Mark Efron, won at weekend. He's going to fight Lennox Clark for British super middleweight title. I think he'll be Joe's 16th British champion if he gets it. That's a record, isn't it?
He's this is where my domestic knowledge isn't that great sometimes. Is Lennox Clark the guy who beat Willie Hutchinson?
I think so, yeah.
Really heavy-handed lad. Very, very heavy-handed. Just solid kid. That's a good fight actually, because Heffron's been beat. Heffron's a good fighter, but he's been beat before. That's a good fight because Mark Heffron's a brother, isn't it? Ronnie Heffron, who was also a
there were big noises made about him, weren't there? Ronnie Heffron at one point, wasn't
there? Ronnie Heffron. I think he beat Tyrone Nurse twice in the amateurs in really tough fights. He was a class lad in his day. And Mark Heffron's a good fighter.
But Lennox Clark box, okay, yeah, I think you might be right there. 20 and 1 he is.
I forget the names sometimes, and this is where Kent would know this, wouldn't he? Kent would know the detail backwards, left to right, but I'm sure it's Lennox Clark is the guy I'm thinking of.
No, I don't see that. What happened to him, that Willie Hutchinson?
Well, it might not have been, obviously it wasn't Lennox Clark then, but he got stopped, did Willie Hutchinson, didn't he? He committed the cardinal sin when he switched in range against the ropes and stuck his chin in the air and got caught with an absolute humdinger. Now I'm wondering who the hell beat Willie Hutchinson.
Here we are, 13-1. Lennox Clark, yeah, it was, yeah.
I thought it was Lennox Clark because I remember watching it and just thinking Willie Hutchinson was a world junior, wasn't he? World junior champion or a world Olympic, Olympic junior champion. And I remember watching the Lennox Clark's fight with Willie Hutchinson, and you could see Lennox Clark, it was just like a man against a boy.
He's not fought since, has he?
They just walked him up against the ropes, and like I say, he committed the cardinal sin, did Hutchinson, of switching in range with his, that is the criticism of a lot of Ingle fighters, is the switch in range and the lift the chin up as they do that pivot. And he switched in range against the ropes, and I'm like cringing watching it, and he just got caught with a couple of massive shots. And it's sometimes you get fighters like that, don't you, suffer such a damaging defeat, and they're unbeaten that they never seem to come back from them. Yeah, that might be it.
Big George Foreman came out a couple of days ago and put something out there, and he said he wanted to be the heavyweight champion of the world. He didn't want to be the richest person in the world. And you think that says a lot about fighters from back then to now?
Absolutely, because the one thing you hear about all the time is the purse bids and the purse split and how much he's getting and how much she's getting. And it was just something in the day. And this isn't looking back again with rose-tinted glasses. This is how it was. It was just a case of, I want to fight the best and I want to prove I'm the best. And guess what? The money will come then, won't it?
Yeah.
I look at Larry Holmes when he beat Kenny Norton, and Larry Holmes defended that belt really, really quickly against some average opposition, some mixed opposition early on. And he wasn't getting paid massive money, wasn't Larry Holmes, for defending his title. And Holmes's first big payday, believe it or not, was Muhammad Ali got £8 million for fighting Holmes as a challenger, and Larry Holmes got £2.5 million for fighting Ali. You never heard of such a scenario. And for Holmes, it was just a case of he just wanted to defend his belt. He wanted to be a world champion, and he wanted to be active. And where did it go wrong? Again, I started the show by saying, when did this happen? And I look at Dillian White, yeah, sulking because he's getting $8.5 million or something, and he's sulking, and because it's an 80-20 split. Well, guess what? You're not the champion. You're not the big attraction. You're not the draw, and you're getting more than most people would never earn that in 5 lifetimes. Working on building sites, and doing hard jobs, and you're in a very, very privileged position. Yeah, you've earned it, but you're complaining about the money. And I just wonder what the Marcianos and the Tonys and the Dempseys and those guys would think of that now. They'll think about fighters who just won't get out of bed. I mean, Anthony Joshua, what will Anthony Joshua want to fight now? 20 million, 25 million?
25 million, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, do you feel when you're watching? Yeah. Do you feel when you watch Joshua, by the way, and it's not attacking Joshua, I'm just talking about the money, the vulgarity of the money that's involved now in.
It's on 600 grand a week, isn't it, outside of purse fight, the actual.
So do you feel you get value for money when you watch Anthony Joshua? Do you feel you're watching a fighter who's worth 25 million?
No, I don't. You know what it reminds me of? That guy that Lennox Lewis smashed up, Michael Grant.
Michael Grant, yeah.
He's a Michael Grant, same sort of style, same body. same everything. And Michael Grant were built up to be this He-Man money.
And that's the difference, wasn't it?
Lennox Lewis put him to Kip, didn't he?
Yep. So Michael Grant had the misfortune of fighting Lennox Lewis, whereas AJ was earning millions fighting Charlie Martin, wasn't he?
And he's not gone anywhere near Wilder or Fury or Louis Ortiz. He swerved all their money.
It's it depends how you look at it, doesn't it? We've said this before. It was either a masterpiece of matchmaking or it was a disaster in terms of developing a fighter, because I still cringe when Usyk's a good fighter, but I still cringe how Ruiz just walked through him. And you look at how helpless he was on the ropes and how he got dropped, and the referee was counting Joshua and he was looking for a sign, wasn't he, to say a protest from Joshua to say, I'm all right, I'm all right. And he was kind of like put his head down, didn't he, like a little boy. And he was so glad when the referee stopped that fight. And then you saw him on the ropes against Usyk in that 12th round. And again, he just looked like this little lost boy who had like just white collar level. I know that might sound like ridiculous because Olympic gold medalist, but his shortcomings as a fighter compared to
the luckiest person. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Sorry, go on.
No, it's fine. Go on. No, just saying, if you look at his cash compared to his skill level, unbelievable.
Listen, Anthony Joshua, I don't get two fucks for him, right? But he's the luckiest person I've ever known in the sport of boxing. He's so fucking lucky, it's unbelievable. Let me tell you this. He only beat the Chinaman in the Olympics. The other three, there were fucking massive protests went in for them other three wins, and there were fucking hell on there. There were hell on, and if you go into history of it on Wikipedia, you'll see all the paperwork, the fucking lawyers, the lot, appeals and everything. There were hell on over three of them decisions. They just brushed it away because it happens in every Olympics, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So he were gifted an Olympic medal. He were gifted. They've been set. It were all set up for him up there at that AIS. It were all in place. Nobody were going to fucking rock that boat, let me tell you. And nobody's rocked his boat since. They've not put him near danger. They've wrapped him in fucking cotton wool, mate. They've wrapped him in what my new boiler's fucking been wrapped in. One of them. You know, one of them big boiler wrapper jobs.
Yeah.
They've wrapped him in one of them, mate, and they've protected him. But they can't protect him no more. He's got to come out and fight somebody now. If he don't fight Usyk next, he can't fight Otto Walling. Get the fuck out of here. No way.
And that's my point, Russell. I would say he's the highest earning, least deserving fighter in boxing.
It's a scandal what's going on, and everybody in boxing knows about it. Bricktop and all them, Frank Warren and them, they know. Hennessy and all them know. They all know. Everybody knows what's gone on. They've all put their heads down. Nobody dares say fucking word in media. Bunts and them know.
I mean,
all them big hitters in media now. All of them.
Imagine if he had fought Fury, and you look back at all the unifications that have happened over the decades.
Yeah.
And generally you get the unifications. Ali Fraser, there was such 50-50 fights, weren't there? And even Holyfield and Lennox was a 60-40 fight. You'd never see a bigger, on paper, a bigger one-sided fight than Fury and Joshua. Had that fight happened, how he got engineered into that situation is, as I've said, it's either a masterpiece or it's a disaster. Because
they've had the platforms, haven't they? They've got all the YouTubers in the pocket. All the media are stuck up Matchroom's arseholes. Yeah. All the YouTubers who want access, they all know what's going on. They all know boxing. It's the passion they follow it about. But they don't say fuck all. None of these YouTubers dare say no. I pulled Kugan Cassius at Nottingham. He went, well, you know what it is, Pork. I've got to do my job and I've got to earn, which is fair enough. So I give him a little bit of respect for that. He's got a living to earn. He's got a family, but they all fucking know. And they're all in on it. And when boxing's in the gutter, because it's heading to gutter, mate, we've all got statistics. We know UFC is coming to UK now. Eddie tried to pal him up in London, Dana White. Let me tell you this. They're all shit in the pants if Dana White comes over here with UFC. 20 years from now, there might not be no fucking boxing, mate, when we're old men.
Wouldn't be surprised. I mean, my interest in it is definitely not what it was. I mean, what is Joshua in his last 4 fights? Without checking, is he 2-2?
2-2 and shite. Well, who's he got wins of? A pool left and what other one?
20-odd stone Ruiz, who trained at Burger King.
Ruiz. 20-odd stone Ruiz, fat as a pig Michelin, man. and fucking old man Pooler, 40-year-old. Get the fuck out of here. And didn't look good in that fight. Looked frightened to death to throw a punch.
Yeah, he didn't look great, did he? I mean, it was always a little bit like, I won't say foul, I won't cry foul play, but it was a little bit like when Frank Bruno was engineered when he fought Oliver McCall.
Fucking hell, mate. Oliver McCall's best win, Oliver McCall. That were like
Oliver McCall didn't throw a fucking punch for 10 rounds, did he? He didn't throw a punch for 10 rounds.
Bruno's best win.
They used to dig him up for Frank, didn't they?
I went to that John Emmon fight.
That was the Dutchman. Yeah, the
Coetzee one. I went to that one as well. Fucking yeah. Jerry Coetzee, only a young lad then with a bit of hair on my head. Jesus, Jerry Coetzee.
I'll never forget the words of or the comment that Harry Carpenter. Remember when in the bull ring when Lloyd Honeyghan knocked out Gene Mad Dog Hatcher, and it might have been in '87. And Frank Bruno fought Chuck Gardner.
Oh, fucking hell, remember that one?
Chuck Gardner, they brought him, it was in Cannes, wasn't it? Or wherever it was. And Chuck Gardner, it was in Spain, sorry. He took his robe off, and they said he was 44, 45. He'd been in with John Tate and guys like that. And he was clearly looked like an old man. And I remember he took his robe off, and Harry Carpenter just went, oh dear. And he just knew, he's like, this guy was just like saggy and his body had gone and everything had completely gone. And Bruno hit him with like a screw jab and he nearly killed him, didn't he? And it was like, he nearly killed Chuck Gardner. It became a bit of a joke with Chuck Gardner. And it kind of highlighted how they really protected our Frank, didn't they? They massively, massively protected Bruno. And
he turned out a shit house anyway, couldn't fight for toffee.
No, it wasn't great, was he? Get in there, Frankie. Lots of heart, and but he was funny. But it just showed, didn't it? And you wonder in some ways, it's almost like Joshua's almost like a slightly higher level. I'm not saying it's better than Bruno, but they've used the tricks, haven't they? They've marketed Joshua in some similar ways to what they marketed Bruno.
Only better.
And the opposition, Anthony Joshua, before he fought Dillian White, had even gone beyond 2 rounds or anything. He'd just been fighting absolute dire opposition. So he's never learned anything, had he? And
Gary Cornish.
Gary Cornish, my God. And if you look at some of the opposition, like who was the old French guy who was 40-year-old, Carlos Takam.
Fucking
and
12 days notice, Takam. What about when they wheeled Johnny Nelson out and he said, I'm really worried for Joshua. Takam reminds me of Holyfield and George Foreman rolled into one.
Fucking hell. I mean, they're on the payroll, aren't they? And do you know
Johnny
what?
Nelson, Joe should be embarrassed about that, Johnny. I know you're watching. I've heard you watch my channel. You fucking.
That's the thing. We said this before, haven't we? With Johnny Nelson and Tony Bellew, they know boxing. They've fucking been in gyms all their life.
But they also want to keep the sends in the fucking pig. They also want to keep the noses in the trough, don't they?
Yeah, of course they do, mate. But yeah, it's cringeworthy, and it's like I say, it's not an attack on Anthony Joshua, but I'll keep repeating the point: is if you think of the NBA, we've seen the Last Dance, which is that amazing documentary about Michael Jordan and Scott
I watched it.
Absolutely unbelievable. Well, the point I'm kind of probably laboring over is the elite level of athlete in the NBA, and that team, the Chicago Bulls, they were like seriously fantastic athletes and paid a shitload of money. But if you look at the heavyweight boxing division and you look at some of the earnings of the heavyweights, proportionally, it just doesn't work, does it? I mean, Deontay Wilder's earned massive money. Wilder really isn't that much of a gifted fighter, is he? Technically, fucking awful, just absolutely awful. If you put Deontay Wilder, alongside a Larry Holmes, for example, on a skill base, you can't even compare the two. And then I thought, Fury's the best of a bad bunch, but we don't have that many gifted athletes at heavyweight level, do we? Who proportionately earn the crazy money these guys are earning. And then you drop down a level, And, you know, we talk about Sykes, and I look at Sykes getting 14 grand for a British title fight, you know, shortlisted for fight of the year against Andy Morris. And then I look at how much Big Joe Joyce and Dubois and how much these guys are earning for a fight. It's fucking upside down. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it is. Well, listen, we've had a good chat, Julian. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. We always kind of go. I always go a little bit off tack, and if I mention the 80s, I will never apologise for mentioning the absolute golden era.
You lose your shit over 80s, you, Julian.
I fucking love the 80s, mate. I was like, I mean, I was you know, I'm an artist. That was my job. I've got a background in design and illustrations, my qualifications, and when I was a kid, I used to illustrate all the time. I was always drawing the fighters. I get KO magazine, and I get these huge drawings all over the bloody house, mate. And I just think it was just such a fantastic era. And I got into boxing. This is a very, very quick one, and I'll leave you guys to it. My brother got KO magazine when it first came out, I think 1979. And I think Eddie Mustafa Muhammad was centerfold, and Michael Spinks was on the cover. I can't remember. And I read this magazine at 9 years old, and I'm like, who are these guys? And I just remember my dad and those guys watching Matthew Saad Muhammad and John Conte on TV and screaming at the TV. And I think when I look back, I think, is it me? Is it fond memories of growing up, being in love with the sport of boxing as a kid? Or is it just because it was absolutely so much better as a sport and the level was so much higher? And then when I look back now, and I still go on YouTube and I watch the classic fights, I think it's not rose-tinted glasses. It's a golden era, mate. It was a fantastic era of boxing. And I'll never, ever apologise for just going back to the 80s, because that's how boxing was and that's how it should be now.
Yeah, that's my sentiment. It's exactly. Yeah. Okie dokie then. Well, listen, you have a great evening.
Nice one, Russell.
And we'll probably speak again. Take care.
No doubt. You take care, mate. See you later.